Lisa Carter sat in the huge crystal room and tried not to show her anger. The alien voices around her made sounds that hurt her ears. Some spoke in clicks and whistles. Others used deep, rumbling noises that made the floor shake. None of them bothered to use the translation devices when humans were listening. This was her life now. Every day for the past 6 months, she came to this floating space station to represent Earth in the Galactic Council. Every day, the 12 alien species reminded her that humans were the youngest and weakest members of their group. The Zalathi looked like walking diamonds. Their crystal skin caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. When they spoke to each other, they used high-pitched sounds that human ears could not hear properly. Lisa knew they did this on purpose. They wanted the humans to feel left out. The big lizard creatures called Morgani had 4 arms each. They were twice as tall as any human. When Lisa tried to speak, they made faces like they smelled something bad. Sometimes they would wave all 4 hands in the air to show how much they hated listening to her. The bug-like Vex were the worst. They looked like giant ants walking on 2 legs. When they talked, they made clicking and scraping sounds with their mouths. The noise made Lisa think of fingernails on a blackboard. She was sure they knew humans hated that sound. Today was worse than usual. Lisa had come to ask for help, and she knew they would say no before she even started talking. The human colony on New Montana is dying, she said, standing up from her small chair. All the aliens had bigger chairs that fit their larger bodies. A disease is killing all their food crops. Without help, over 2 million people will starve. The diamond-skinned Zalathi leader made a sound like breaking glass. Through the translator, his words came out cold and sharp. The Zalathi have technology that could fix this problem in 3 days. But this technology is only for real council members. We are council members, Lisa said, trying to keep her voice calm. Humans have been part of the council for 43 years. The big Morgani leader laughed. The sound was like rocks falling down a mountain. You are junior members, baby members. Your species is too young and too weak to receive our best technology. The HFY leader clicked and scraped for a long time. When the translation came, it was even worse. Perhaps the humans should have chosen a better world for growing food. This is not our problem. Lisa felt her hands shake with anger, but she kept them still at her sides. 2 million people will die. Then maybe humans will learn to make better choices, said the Zalathi leader. Far away in space, Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship and watched the stars. His ship was called the UES Liberty, and it was the biggest and strongest ship humans had ever built. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Jake had been listening to the council meeting through a secret communication link. Every word made him more angry. He looked at the display showing all the human ships under his command. There were more ships than the aliens knew about. Much more. Captain, said his second officer, Lisa Rodriguez. The aliens are using us again. She was right. For 43 years, humans had done all the dangerous jobs for the council. When alien worlds had problems with space pirates, human ships went to fight them. When alien mining operations found hostile creatures, human soldiers went to deal with them. When dangerous materials needed to be moved through deadly space, human crews volunteered. The aliens were happy to let humans die for them. They just did not want to treat humans as equals. Jake looked at a report on his desk. It showed every time the council had asked humans for help in the past year. The number was shocking. Human ships had fought in 37 battles. Human soldiers had died on 19 different worlds. Human crews had transported deadly chemicals through space storms 12 times. In return, the council had given humans the worst planets to live on. They had refused to share advanced technology. They had stolen credit for human discoveries and claimed alien scientists had made them instead. How many of our people are going to die on New Montana? Asked Lisa. Rodriguez. Jake checked his computer. The medical reports say at least 50,000. Maybe more. The crop disease spreads faster every day. They both knew the aliens could stop it easily. The Zalathi had machines that could fix any biological problem in hours. They had used these machines to save their own worlds many times, but they would not use them to save humans. The alien ships are moving again, reported the navigation officer. 3 Morgani battle groups are heading toward the outer rim. They want us to deal with some new threat while they stay safe at home. Jake nodded. This was how it always worked. The aliens found dangerous problems and sent humans to solve them. If humans died, the aliens did not care. There were always more humans willing to help. But something was changing. Jake could feel it in his bones. His crew could feel it too. All across human space, people were starting to ask the same question. Why did they keep helping aliens who hated them? On Earth, President Nathan Cross sat in his office reading reports that made him sick to his stomach. Every page showed another example of alien cruelty toward humans. Every file contained another story of human deaths that could have been prevented if the aliens had shared their technology. His assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, Dr. Kevin Hayes is here to see you." Dr. Hayes was the smartest human scientist alive. He had been studying alien technology for 20 years. More importantly, he had been keeping track of every time the aliens had hurt humans through cruelty or neglect. "Mr. President," Dr. Hayes said as he entered the office, "I have finished my report on the New Montana situation." He placed a thick file on the desk. The Zalathi technology could save every person on that planet. The cost to them would be almost nothing. They refuse to help because they enjoy watching us suffer. President Cross opened the file and read the first page. The words made him feel cold inside. "They think of us as animals." "Worse than animals," Dr. Hayes said. "They think of us as tools. Useful tools that can be thrown away when they break." The president looked out his window at the city below. Somewhere out there, families were preparing to send their children to colonies like New Montana. Those children might grow up only to starve because aliens thought human lives had no value. "How long can we keep accepting this?" the president asked. Dr. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very soft. "I think we are close to finding out. 2 million people were about to die, and the most powerful beings in the galaxy thought it was funny. Somewhere in the darkness of space, something was building in the human heart. It had been building for 43 years. The aliens called it patience. They were wrong. It was pressure. And pressure, when it builds long enough, eventually has to go somewhere. 6 months had passed since the aliens refused to help New Montana. The human colony survived, but barely. Ships from Earth brought emergency food supplies. Families ate one small meal each day. Children cried from hunger in their beds at night. 47,000 people died anyway. Most were old people and small children who could not survive on so little food. Each death was slow and painful. Each death could have been prevented with alien technology that would have cost almost nothing to use. President Nathan Cross stood in a cemetery on Earth. Around him were 47,000 white stones. Each stone had a name carved into it. Each name was a person who died because aliens thought human lives were worthless. The funeral was broadcast to every human world. Millions of people watched their president place flowers on the graves. Many people cried. Others felt something harder and colder growing in their hearts. Captain Jake Morrison watched the funeral from his ship. His fleet was bigger now than it had been 6 months ago. The aliens thought humans were just building more patrol ships to do dangerous jobs in outer space. They were wrong. Every new human ship carried weapons the aliens had never seen. Dr. Kevin Hayes and his team of scientists had been studying alien technology for decades. They had learned how to make it better. Much better. "Captain," said Commander Lisa Rodriguez, "the new soldiers are ready for inspection." Jake nodded and walked to the training bay. Inside, 300 men and women practiced fighting techniques, designed specifically for killing aliens. They learned where to hit Morgani lizards to break through their tough scales. They studied how to disrupt the crystal formations that gave Zalathi their power. They discovered the exact sounds that could drive the bug-like Vex into panic. These soldiers called themselves breakers. They trained in secret on ships far from alien eyes. Every day they became more deadly. Every day they prepared for a war that felt more and more inevitable. On the other side of the galaxy, human spies worked in alien cities and space stations. Agent Tony Blake lived on the Morgani homeworld. pretending to be a simple human trader. In reality, he mapped every military base and weapons factory. He counted their ships and studied their battle plans. Agent Sandra Mills worked inside a Vex hive station. The bug creatures thought she was just another human maintenance worker. They never suspected she was recording everything she saw. She learned how their hive mind worked and how it could be broken. Agent Carl Stone operated near Zalathi Crystal Gardens. The diamond-skinned aliens believed humans were too stupid to understand their technology. Carl proved them wrong every day as he studied their defenses and found their weak points. All of this information flowed back to Earth, where General Patricia Stone organized it into battle plans. She was preparing for a war that officially did not exist, but she knew it was coming. The breaking point moved closer when 3 terrible things happened in just 2 weeks. First, a human exploration ship called the UES Discovery found a new alien species. Captain Susan Clark reported the discovery to the Galactic Council, as human law required. The new aliens were called Fenari. They were peaceful and incredibly smart, especially with mathematics and engineering. Within days, Morgani warships arrived in Fenari space. The lizard creatures declared the Fenari to be primitive beings who needed guidance. This was a lie. The Morgani enslaved the entire Fenari species and forced them to work in computational facilities. The peaceful mathematicians became property of the Morgani Empire. Captain Clark sent angry messages to the Council. She demanded justice for the Fenari people. The Council's response was simple. The Morgani have proper authority over primitive species. Humans should not interfere. Second, a human medical ship carrying supplies to refugee camps was captured by Vex forces. The ship's captain, Robert Phillips, and his crew of 26 people were accused of trespassing in Vex space. The area had been neutral territory for hundreds of years, but the Vex suddenly claimed it belonged to them. Captain Phillips and his crew were put on trial for crimes against the natural order. All 27 humans were sentenced to life, in prison on a Vex labor colony. When Ambassador Lisa Carter protested, she was told that humans should teach their people to respect proper boundaries. The third incident was the worst of all. A human research station orbiting a gas giant was destroyed by Zalathi forces. The station housed 340 scientists and their families. They were studying weather patterns on the planet. Below, the Zalathi claimed the station was conducting dangerous experiments that threatened their nearby crystal formations. They provided no evidence. They allowed no investigation. They simply destroyed the station with all hands. Among the dead was Dr. Michelle Hayes, daughter of Dr. Kevin Hayes. She was 28 years old and one of the most brilliant scientists of her generation. Her father received news of her death while working in his laboratory on Earth. Dr. Hayes sat alone in his office for 3 hours after hearing the news. When he finally stood up, his face had changed. The sadness was still there, but something else had joined it. Something cold and determined and very dangerous. He called President Cross immediately. "Sir, I need to brief you on our weapons development program. I think you will find the results very interesting." Meanwhile, the Galactic Council announced their final insult. Human colonies in 17 star systems would be relocated to make room for expanding alien territories. Over 30 million humans would have to abandon their homes within 2 years. No compensation would be provided. No assistance would be given. The replacement territories offered to humans were in the galactic dead zone where even the alien species refused to go. The planets were hostile wastelands with poisonous atmospheres and deadly radiation. Sending humans there was not relocation. It was murder disguised as bureaucracy. Ambassador Carter received this news while sitting in the same crystal chamber where she had begged for help to save New Montana. The same aliens who had watched 47,000 humans starve to death were now planning to kill 30 million more. She maintained her diplomatic composure until she returned to her private quarters. Then she sent an encrypted message to Earth. "Mr. President, I formally request permission to withdraw from my position. I can no longer represent humanity to beings who view us as expendable animals." President Cross read her message while sitting in an emergency meeting with his top advisors. General Stone had spread military reports across the table. Dr. Hayes had brought files full of weapon specifications and alien weakness analyses. Admiral Morrison participated through a secure communication link from his flagship. The room was quiet for a long time. These were the people who made the hardest decisions for all of humanity. They had spent 43 years trying to make peace work with aliens who hated them. Finally, President Cross spoke. His voice was very quiet, but everyone in the room heard every word clearly. 43 years. We have been patient for 43 years. He looked around the table at each person present. How many more of our people have to die before we admit that patience has not worked? Nobody answered because they all knew the answer was 0. They had reached the end of patience. They had found the breaking point, and once humans stopped being patient, the galaxy was going to learn what they were really capable of. The meeting took place deep underground in the Rocky Mountains. President Nathan Cross sat at a long metal table surrounded by the most powerful humans in the galaxy. The room had no windows and thick walls that could stop any kind of spying device. General Patricia Stone sat to his right. Her gray hair was pulled back tight and her eyes looked like steel. She had spent her entire life in the military and had never lost a battle. Today she was planning the biggest battle in human history. Admiral Jake Morrison appeared on a large screen at the end of the table. His ship was 3 months away from Earth, but quantum communication let him join the meeting instantly. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with quiet activity. Dr. Kevin Hayes sat across from the general. His face looked older than it had a week ago. The death of his daughter had changed something deep inside him. He carried a thick folder filled with papers that would change everything. Ambassador Lisa Carter sat at the far end of the table. She had just returned from the council station for the last time. Her diplomatic career was over. Today she would help start a war. President Cross looked around the table at each person. These 5 people would make the decision that would affect every human in the galaxy. The weight of that responsibility felt heavier than mountains. Ambassador Carter, he said quietly, please give us your final report. Lisa opened her briefing folder with steady hands. The council has given us their final answer about the relocation order. 30 million humans must leave 17-star systems within 2 years. The replacement planets they offer us are in the dead zone. No species has ever survived there for more than a few months. She turned a page and continued reading. They will provide no transportation assistance, no supplies, no equipment. They expect us to abandon our homes and die quietly in the dead zone so they can take our worlds. It is not relocation, said General Stone. It is genocide with paperwork, Dr. Hayes opened his folder and pulled out photographs. These are pictures from our spy network on the alien homeworlds. Last week, the council leaders held a private meeting to discuss the human problem. He spread the photos across the table. They showed alien leaders in a comfortable room, drinking and laughing together. Hidden cameras had recorded everything, they said. They joked about the deaths on New Montana, Dr. Hayes said, his voice completely flat. They called it cleaning up human clutter. They laughed about how easy it has been to manipulate us for 43 years. President Cross picked up one of the photos. It showed a Morgani leader making a toast while other aliens clapped their hands and tentacles. What were they toasting? He asked. Dr. Hayes looked directly at the president. The final solution to the human problem. They plan to use our soldiers as expendable shock troops in a war against some unknown enemy in the galactic core. After that war, any humans who survive will be enslaved completely. The room became very quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. The aliens had never seen humans as junior partners or even useful tools. They had always planned to destroy humanity completely. Dr. Hayes, said the president, what do your weapons teams have to report? The scientist opened another section of his folder. We have reverse-engineered every piece of alien technology we have encountered in 4 decades. More than that, we have improved it significantly. He pulled out technical diagrams that showed weapon designs unlike anything the aliens possessed. Human engineering applied to alien science produces results far superior to anything the Council currently has. Our weapons can penetrate their shields. Our shields can stop their weapons. Our ships are faster and more maneuverable than theirs. Admiral Morrison leaned forward on the screen. My fleet report confirms this. We now have 2,847 ships ready for combat. Each one is equipped with technology the aliens have never seen. They think we have a few hundred patrol boats. They have no idea what we actually built. General Stone spread out her own papers. Military assessment is clear. In a direct conflict with the entire Council, human forces have a 73% chance of victory. That number increases to 86% if we strike first and maintain the element of surprise. President Cross studied the numbers in front of him. 73%. Those were good odds, but they meant that hundreds of thousands of humans would die in the fighting, maybe millions. The Council species have grown lazy, continued the General. They rely on their reputation and the belief that younger species will always submit to them. They have never faced an enemy that spent decades studying their weaknesses while being systematically underestimated. The debate that followed lasted through the night and into the next day. Some argued for continued diplomacy. Others suggested gradual resistance or selective retaliation. But every proposal came back to the same basic truth. The aliens would never accept humans as equals. The final decision came when Agent Tony Blake's last transmission reached Earth. The spy had hidden cameras throughout the Morgani home world. His final recording showed the Council leaders in their most private moments. The video played on the big screen. Alien leaders sat around a table covered with food and drink. They were relaxed and happy. They spoke freely about their plans for humanity. The humans are so stupid, laughed a Zalathi leader. They actually believe we might treat them as equals someday. The best part, said a Vex Node Prime, is how grateful they are when we let them die for us. They actually volunteer for the most dangerous missions. Soon we will not need to pretend anymore, added a Morgani war chief. After they help us fight the core worlds, we can collar the survivors and put them to work in the mines. The aliens laughed together at the idea of enslaved humans working until they died in alien mines. They joked about which humans would make the best slaves. They discussed breeding programs to make humans more obedient. President Cross watched the entire recording without moving or speaking. When it ended, he sat in silence for several minutes. Everyone in the room waited for his decision. When he finally stood up, his movement was slow and deliberate. His voice, when he spoke, was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute certainty. Ambassador Carter, transmit our formal withdrawal from the Galactic Council. Include a copy of this recording so they know we heard every word. He turned to the screen. Admiral Morrison, activate Operation Reckoning. All human fleets are authorized to defend human interests by any means necessary. Finally, he looked at General Stone. Initiate Protocol 7 across all human territories. As of this moment, humanity is no longer asking for permission. The die was cast. After 43 years of patience, humanity had finally reached its breaking point. The aliens thought they knew what humans were capable of. They had seen human ships patrol dangerous space. They had watched human soldiers fight their battles. They had observed human diplomats beg for scraps of respect. What they had never seen was what humans could do when they stopped being patient and started being honest about their intentions. The galaxy was about to learn the difference between a species that chooses peace and a species that is incapable of war. Humanity had always been capable of war. They had just been polite enough not to mention it. That politeness was now officially over. For 6 hours, every human ship in the galaxy went silent. Trade vessels stopped responding to alien messages. Colony ships disappeared from tracking systems. The massive human fleet patrolling the outer rim vanished completely from all sensors. On the council station, Zalathi Counselor Harmony of Crystal Song felt something she had never experienced before. The diamond-skinned alien stood in the great crystal chamber and tried to understand why all human communication had stopped at exactly the same moment. War Leader Scarth of the Morgani Empire laughed at her concern. The huge lizard creature waved, all 4 of his arms dismissively. This is typical mammal behavior. They are having an emotional breakdown. Give them a few days and they will come crawling back to beg for forgiveness. Node Prime 7749 of the Vex Coalition calculated probabilities. With the efficiency of a living computer, human resistance will collapse within 3.7 standard days once our enforcement fleets reach their worlds. They lack the industrial capacity for sustained conflict. All three alien leaders were about to learn how wrong they could be. Operation Reckoning began at exactly 8 in the morning, Universal Standard Time. Across 17 star systems, human forces simultaneously stopped pretending to be weak and started demonstrating why they had survived on a planet that tried to kill them for millions of years. The Morgani enforcement fleet approaching New Montana consisted of 47 warships. Each ship was larger and more heavily armed than anything humans were supposed to possess. The Morgani expected to find frightened colonists ready to submit to relocation orders. Instead, they found Admiral Jake Morrison aboard the UES Liberty, leading a human task force that should not have existed according to every Council intelligence report. Morgani Fleet, Morrison broadcast on all frequencies. You are ordered to leave this system immediately. Any attempt to approach human colonies will be considered an act of war. War leader Thax commanded the Morgani fleet from his flagship. The giant lizard had fought in dozens of battles against primitive species. He had never lost a single engagement. Human threats did not concern him. Small mammals, he replied, prepare to be relocated or destroyed. Your choice is irrelevant. The battle that followed lasted 4 hours and changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about human capabilities. Morrison's ships moved like nothing the Morgani had ever seen. They were faster, more agile, and their weapons cut through Morgani, shields like they were made of paper. Human missiles struck with impossible precision. Human energy beams burned through armor that had never been penetrated before. The humans fought with tactics that confused and terrified their enemies. They used the gravity of planets to slingshot around Morgani ships. They coordinated attacks from multiple directions simultaneously. They targeted specific systems to disable rather than destroy, then captured the helpless ships intact. When the battle ended, 39 Morgani ships had been destroyed. 6 more had been captured with their crews taken prisoner. Only 2 ships escaped to carry news of the disaster back to the Morgani homeworld. Morrison's fleet lost 11 ships, but their crews had evacuated to nearby vessels before their ships activated experimental self-destruct systems. The explosions denied the Morgani any chance to study human technology. Similar battles erupted across human space. The Vex Coalition discovered that their greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. Their hive mind allowed perfect coordination between ships, but when human special forces called breakers boarded their vessels and destroyed key communication nodes, entire fleets became paralyzed. The Zalathi learned that their crystalline perfection became deadly fragility when facing kinetic weapons traveling at precisely calculated velocities. Human railguns fired solid metal projectiles that shattered crystal hulls like glass. But the real shock came when human retaliation extended far beyond their own territories. Dr. Kevin Hayes had spent years mapping Council infrastructure and identifying critical points where maximum damage would cripple multiple species simultaneously. Agent Tony Blake's spy network activated across the galaxy, revealing that humans had been placing operatives throughout Council space for decades. On the Morgani home world, 37 communication relay stations exploded simultaneously. The shaped charges had been placed by human operatives posing as maintenance workers over the course of several years. The explosions knocked out all long-range communication for the entire Morgani Empire. The Vex Coalition's central processing nodes suffered cascading failures as human-designed computer viruses corrupted their hive mind network. The viruses had been introduced through routine software updates by human technicians who had worked in Vex facilities for months or years. Zalathi crystal farms began resonating at frequencies that caused structural collapse. Human agents had introduced harmonic disruptors into the crystal growth medium. The disruption spread from farm to farm, destroying the technological foundation of Zalathi civilization. Within 72 hours, the Council's communication networks were in chaos. Their fleets were scattered or destroyed. Their leaders struggled. to understand how the supposedly weak humans had orchestrated such devastating coordinated attacks. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as news spread through independent communication networks. The humans had declared war not just on individual council species, but on the entire galactic order that had kept them subjugated for 43 years. President Nathan Cross addressed humanity from the Oval Office on Earth. His speech was broadcast on every human communication network and simultaneously transmitted to every alien world that still had functioning receivers. For 43 years we sought peace. We offered cooperation. We provided service when asked. We endured contempt when we deserved respect. We accepted losses that should never have happened. We buried our dead while our supposed allies laughed at our grief. His voice remained calm and steady throughout the speech, but his words carried the weight of accumulated anger from an entire species. Today, that ends. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council not in defeat, but in recognition that some institutions are too corrupt to reform. We do not seek to rule other species. We seek only to ensure that no species will ever again mistake human patience for human weakness. The broadcast concluded with a simple statement that sent shockwaves throughout what remained of Council space. Humanity is no longer asking for equality. We are taking it. In the crystal chamber of the Council station, the three remaining alien leaders stared at reports of devastation from across their territories. Harmony of crystal songs' crystalline form flickered with patterns of confusion and fear. War leader Scarth's forearms hung limp at his sides as he read casualty reports from his scattered fleets. Node Prime 7749 calculated and recalculated the same impossible probabilities. How did they hide such military capabilities? Whispered the Zalathi leader. We never bothered to look, replied Scarth, his voice hollow with the realization of his species' arrogance. Node Prime 7749 spoke, with the mechanical precision of a damaged computer. Analysis indicates humans have been preparing for this conflict for decades, while maintaining the appearance of compliance. Conclusion: we have been systematically deceived by a species we considered inferior. The galaxy had learned its first lesson about humanity. There was a difference between being peaceful and being harmless, and humanity, it turned out, had never been harmless at all. 3 months after Operation Reckoning began, the galaxy looked completely different. The Galactic Council no longer existed as a working government. The 12 species that had once ruled hundreds of worlds now struggled to control their own home systems. The Morgani Empire had broken apart into dozens of smaller city-states that fought each other, instead of expanding into space. The Vex Coalition operated at less than 30% efficiency, with their hive mind network still damaged from human computer viruses. The Zalathi had retreated to their core worlds, their crystal technology too shattered to support their former power. But humanity's victory had come at a terrible cost. 400,000 human military personnel had died in the 3-month war. Entire colonies had been evacuated under enemy fire. Some human worlds bore scars that would take generations to heal. The difference was that humanity had chosen this cost, instead of having it forced upon them by alien indifference. President Nathan Cross stood at his office window looking out at Washington, D.C. The city looked the same as it had before the war, but everything had changed. Earth was no longer a junior member of somebody else's government. Earth was now the center of a new kind of galactic civilization. Admiral Jake Morrison, now promoted to Supreme Fleet Commander, controlled human patrol zones that covered former Council territories. His ships did not occupy alien worlds or enslave alien populations. Instead, they enforced a simple principle. No species could force its will upon another through violence or threats. The irony was not lost on Morrison. Humanity had been forced to fight a war in order to establish peace. Dr. Kevin Hayes led a joint scientific council that included researchers from species that had chosen to ally with humanity during the conflict. The Fenari, freed from Morgani slavery, contributed their mathematical knowledge to projects that helped all participating species. The Corvani, a species that had been exploited by the Zalathi for centuries, shared their expertise in quantum mechanics. These species had not joined humanity because they loved human ideas about democracy and equality, They joined because human government actually delivered on its promises of mutual benefit and respect. Ambassador Lisa Carter, now Secretary of Interspecies Relations, worked with leaders from 47 different species to establish something called the Terran Compact. This was a new galactic government based on equality instead of hierarchy. The Compact's founding document had been written by human philosophers working alongside alien ethicists. It established rights that the old council had never recognized: the right to govern yourself, the right to preserve your own culture, the right to defend yourself against attack, and the right to participate equally in galactic affairs. Not every species joined the compact. Some surviving Morgani states maintained their independence, as did several Zelathi enclaves and reformed Vex collectives. But they existed within boundaries enforced by human fleets, knowing that any return to their old imperial behavior would meet decisive resistance. The changes went beyond politics to economics and culture. Human merchants, no longer restricted by council trade barriers, established prosperity networks that connected species that had been forbidden from trading with each other for centuries. Human engineers worked alongside alien specialists to develop technologies that benefited all participants instead of enriching dominant species at the expense of weaker ones. Human cultural exchanges introduced concepts of individual worth and cooperative achievement to societies that had known only rigid hierarchies and submission to authority. 5 years after the breaking point, President Cross walked through a memorial garden on Earth. 47,000 white stones commemorated the people who had died on New Montana. Similar memorials existed on every human world, honoring those who had died not in war but from council cruelty and neglect. Beside him walked Fenari Ambassador Bright Calculation in Starlight. Her species had gone from slavery to freedom because humans had refused to accept the old galactic order. She spoke in the mathematical harmonics her people preferred. The equation of patience and breaking points produces fascinating results, she said. Your species calculated correctly that some costs, when imposed rather than chosen, become unacceptable regardless of their magnitude. Cross nodded as he watched representatives from dozens of species place their own memorial tokens among the human stones. The garden had become a symbol not just of human loss, but of the price all species had paid for the old order's cruelty. We never wanted to break, he told her quietly. We wanted them to bend. But when bending became impossible, she replied, breaking became inevitable. And from broken things, new structures can grow. Around them, the memorial garden bustled with quiet activity. Zelathi refugees who had rejected their species' arrogance worked alongside human gardeners to tend the flowers. Former Vex drones, now freed from hive mind control, learned individual names and personal preferences. Young Morgani who had grown up under the compact played games with human children, their natural aggression channeled into friendly competition. The galaxy had learned many lessons from humanity's patient decades and violent months. They learned that cooperation produced better results than domination. They learned that respect had to be mutual to be meaningful. They learned that equality could not be granted by superiors, but had to be claimed by equals. But perhaps most importantly, they learned that some species became most dangerous not when they were angry, but when they finally stopped being patient. Cross looked up at the evening sky where the lights of orbital stations and passing ships created a web of peaceful commerce and communication. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had been enemies for millennia. Scientific discoveries were shared openly instead of hoarded by dominant species. Cultural exchanges enriched every participating civilization. Do you think we made the right choice? He asked the Fenari ambassador. Bright Calculation in Starlight performed a complex mathematical gesture that expressed certainty across multiple probability matrices. President Cross, your species faced a simple equation. Accept extinction through gradual degradation or risk extinction through direct confrontation. You chose the path that offered hope. A group of children ran past them, laughing as they played a game that mixed human, Fenari, and Corvani rules. Their laughter carried across the memorial garden, mixing with the sound of evening birds and distant music from a cultural festival. In the city, the old council taught the galaxy that power meant the ability to make others submit, said the ambassador. Humanity taught the galaxy that true power means the ability to make others want to cooperate. Cross smiled as he watched the children play. Tomorrow there would be new challenges, new species to welcome into the compact, new problems to solve through cooperation instead of force. But tonight, he could rest knowing that no human child would ever again have to beg aliens for the right to live. The galaxy would never forget the moment humanity's patience finally broke. But more importantly, it would never forget what humanity built from the pieces of the old broken system. No species would ever again mistake human kindness for weakness, because they had learned the difference between being peaceful and being harmless. And humanity had proven once and for all that they had never been harmless at all.